Hey guys, this is Caspi with Tape, and today you join me for episode 26 of Road to Colonisation, and we start by leaving Eve. Yes, we got to Eve a while ago, and it seems like we're leaving not long after, because time's advancing more quickly now, as I have less little things that need doing in the space program, so we only had like a couple of episodes here, pretty much only one big episode, but whatever. Anyway, we've set up our maneuver and it is time to go home. And we do need to get the Concordia home, as it will play a very important role in the upcoming Joule mission. So anyway, yes, it's going to get another flight, because why waste it? It's beautiful. Anyway, we've got our maneuver set in. We are here now on the right side of Eve, and we're going to fire up our engines and get going. Now, the center of mass is a little off because of that lander, which is still on there. But it doesn't affect it, because it's got pretty strong reaction wheels, and if I needed to, it also has monopropellant. But yeah, for now, it's fine, so that's not too much of a problem, as it was with the Canterbury. The Canterbury was a very uncontrollable ship when it's off balance, but it should be fine on future missions when it's taking less things and can get everything it's taking into its cargo bay, because that way it kind of drags behind. But anyway, yes, this is getting on its way now. The 3 crew, I think it only has... No, it has 4 crew. It has the big 4, because there needed to be a pilot, a backup pilot for when Jeb went to Gilly, and obviously a scientist and an engineer. Not that we used the scientist or the engineer, but you got to take them on missions, right? Because we've completed the tech tree now, so we don't really need the science. So Eve was just a bit of a... Might as well go there. We got the ship. So, yeah, and it was nice to see. It was nice to land on Gilly. It was nice to get that probe down to the surface of Eve, even though I kind of screwed up and everything exploded, because the combination of mods makes it pretty difficult, and I don't plan things very well. But yes, we have our escape from Eve now, and we will be arriving at Kerbal fairly soon, actually, not long after the Canterbury, even though the Canterbury left quite a while ago. So yes, you can see that that should all be quite well, like that, with that plane change in a bit. But for now, yeah, that's all we have to see for now, because it's on its way. We'll have to do a plane change in a little bit, but now we'll get at least a nice shot of us leaving Eve, as I like to get when we leave planets. But now, on to the main part of the video. Last time we got a probe to Joule, and now it has a few missions to take on, the first of which is heading to Laythe. It has a little probe that needs to drop into Laythe, and then the main craft will head off to go and do something else. Now, the lower stage needs to get us all the way to Laythe and into orbit of Laythe, because we also have an objective to orbit Laythe. And then that has to break away. Then we have to drop the probe before we can use the engine on the main spacecraft. So hopefully there will be enough Delta V, and there is, actually. I thought I'd have to do some crazy gravity assisting, but it turns out not so much. Now you may notice, and you may have noticed last episode, that remote tech has been turned off. That is because this is the last probe, and I didn't want any remote tech shenanigans making this a really trashy episode where I spend just years doing nothing and then lose the probe. I wanted this to be more fun, and, you know, remote tech is a lot of fun most of the time, but sometimes it's just so annoying, and I was just having none of that. So that's why there's no remote tech. I know, I bitched out, but whatever. But anyway, yeah, so now we're getting our encounter with Laythe all set up. I do want to do a plane change, so that we arrive at the equator and when the main craft exits Laythe to go somewhere else, it'll be in a fairly normal plane. So you can see I'm just doing a little bit of finagling to see if I can get nice and close to Laythe, by also doing a few tiny little burns there to bring myself closer to Laythe. That's why I kept clicking the maneuver node to update my orbit, because annoyingly it doesn't update in real time when you have a maneuver node. But anyway, so yes, now we're going to do our plane change, and then we should be getting on to Laythe, dropping our little probe onto the surface, because, well, of course, we have the big Joule mission coming up. We need to know what Laythe is like. It looks like there's a bit of a burn problem there. We'll just do a quick, I think, retrograde burn to fix that, but all is good. But yes, we need to know what Laythe is like. We need some idea, and I do like sending probes before I send Kerbals. So yeah. Actually, looks like I need to do a prograde burn there. But yes, so that's our mission, and then I think we have a lot of options about what to do next. We could explore pretty much Bop or Pol, but we'll have to see how much fuel we have and which one pays better and all of that. But yes, now we have our encounter with Laythe. This is actually the second visit to Laythe of this probe. It did one for, I think I grabbed my encounter using Laythe. I don't actually remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So orbital insertion burn will take up pretty much all of the fuel in the nuclear stage. There will be a little bit left, but that's fine. We just can't really use it for anything, so we're just going to ditch it. Probably just to sit around Laythe forever. Maybe we'll have a spare nuclear engine if ever we need it when we set up our colony here, because that's what we're doing. This has been a road to colonization. We need to colonize somewhere, and the best place to colonize is, of course, Laythe, because it has an oxygen atmosphere and liquid water, which I believe is actually H2O, so that's quite nice. Yes, obviously we also have a bit of a colonization effort on Duna, but yeah, we get an annoying texture glitch here, so I do a quick save and a quick load just to get rid of that. That will be Scatterer's beautiful work. Yes, we complete some missions. We have to, of course, orbit Laythe. We got that, and also some science back from Laythe. Got just, yeah, doing all kinds of missions. Look at that. Lots of money. This is also important because we've got to get a lot of money for my Joule mission because it's very big. Anyway, now into 1x time accelerate. We ditched the nuclear stage so that we can ditch the probe, and that has backwards facing SRBs on it, which should deorbit it quite nicely. Hopefully it's balanced because it has no reaction wheels, because I forgot to put them on because I'm good at this game. So anyway, we decouple it, and then it's pointing roughly retrograde, so we're going to fire up those SRBs when we're far away enough from the probe not to cause any damage, and see how it goes, I guess. You can see it's all powered by little tiny RTGs. And there we go. It fires retrograde, starts to flip, which actually helps us out because it would have burned too much retrograde. And we're going to hit Laythe pretty hard. It's rotating, so I'm just going to hit the time warp when we're facing prograde, so that when we get down to the atmosphere, we'll be facing roughly retrograde. And hopefully that will shield us from the heating of Laythe. This was a bit of a slapdash thing. I thought it would deorbit slightly more cleanly and not so severely. It's going to be a very steep descent, but we do have a heat shield, so all is fine. I like these tiny little probe designs where it's all just tucked behind a little heat shield and isn't really massively functional, but just has a bunch of equipment on it. So yes, I'm very glad that this is finally getting down there, and we get a bunch of world firsts. We make quite a lot of money off Laythe, and we will off the rest of Joule as well, because we're going to need, I think I've estimated something like 4.5 million funds for my colonization plans. I will be talking through the entire architecture next episode, but that will be next episode. Anyway, yes, we have survived re-entry somewhat inexplicably. That was pretty hard. That was all at 1x time accelerate, and we have a couple of drogue chutes to land on. Hopefully that will be enough, and if it's not, we can ditch the heat shield, and then hopefully it will be enough, but drogue chutes aren't great at landing, so maybe this was an oversight. Get a nice shot of Joule there, and start to land into Laythe, which is always beautiful, especially with Scatterer. Look at all that atmospheric scattering. You can see other moons in the sky. It's just perfect. Anyway, we're taking bits of science on the way down. I don't know if I transmit them back. We ditched the heat shield, and I do start transmitting them back, just in case we don't survive re-entry, don't survive landing, because we are coming down pretty hard, so I'm thinking this will be largely destroyed, and it is, except for the probe and an antenna, so we do get a world first for landing, but then we stop looking down at the crashed spacecraft and take a little while to look up at the sky and watch the sun drift towards Joule through the ocean. We're looking up through the ocean, so that's part of the reason it looks so cool, and because of Scatterer. And this is just one of my favourite shots I've ever seen in Kerbal Space Program. I think this is just... it was just fantastic. I don't know if I've said this before, but I fucking love Scatterer, and that just made this even more beautiful, and... God, that was a nice shot. Anyway, let's move on. Stop being so goddamn sentimental and get to work. Because as I said, 4.5 million funds, that's what I'll need for my Joule architecture. This ain't some bitch little Duna mission. This is going to be some big stuff. So we've got to go and explore one of the other moons. Now, I think I only really have enough fuel to explore one moon, since I also have to land. So after a bit of planning, I pick Pol, because that is the better paying mission, and also, in my opinion, the nicer looking planet. I've forgotten if it's Pol or Bop, which has the Kraken on it, but whatever. So anyway, yes, we wait until our exit burn will be in Laythe's prograde, which will give us a nice little boost up to Pol, and that'll save a little bit of fuel and ensure that we can indeed land on Pol. Yes, this doesn't have any landing legs, but those RTGs might help, who knows. And that will probably be this probe's final destination, because it's not really fueled for another mission. It wasn't really designed for that, but I made the mistake of taking on a million missions for Joule, which has just been waiting there for this whole series, meaning that I can't take on that many missions. Pretty big mistake on my part. I get too excited, and yeah. And then we get a really nice transitional shot of me flying from Laythe to Joule. I thought that just looked pretty cool. And now it's going to be a matter of finagling our orbit so that we can actually get to Pol. I've got to avoid all the moons on the few orbits it's going to take to meet up with it, so I'm going to have to place my orbit quite well, which I'm going to do here. A nice little prograde burn, then obviously I'll have to do a plane change to meet up with to meet up with Pol, and then probably another burn to get my orbital timings down. So yeah, you can see that I'm currently kind of in a phase where I'll just always miss it because we're kind of timed to about half an orbit, so that's not fantastic. So yes, we'll deal with that later. I tend to plan ahead too much on these missions, so I'm just going to do one burn at a time, and then, just hopefully get there. So yes, I do a little, do our plane change there, so that we can start planning properly. And yes, I always do love coming to Jool, just because it's like its own little solar system, and you can just, save fuel by doing gravity assists. I haven't really done any in this mission, because I just haven't needed to, and, I'm not particularly good at that, and there is a time constraint, but it's always nice. Anyway, we've got our maneuver planned there so that we'll actually meet up with it. Now it needs to be tweaked a little more, so if I did a tiny little burn here, I'll be able to line up with it properly, so I can land on so I can fly past the equator, and then we'll have more than enough fuel to circularize and probably enough to land, so all is good. So we'll do a bit of time warping. I think I'll need to do 2 orbits of... Oh no, this is right now. Yeah, I'm going to do the prograde burn now. There's a lot of burns for this, meeting up with Pol. I also picked Pol because Bops, while it's closer, it's on a way more severe inclination, which would have made it harder to meet. So yeah, and I can also explore Bop when I come here next with crew, which will just make it easier because we'll have so many more resources. The problem with these probes is you kind of plan it so far in advance that you kind of get here and have to just kind of work with what you've got. Obviously I don't plan things like NASA plans things or whomever plans things, because it's a game, so I kind of turn up here and I'm like, did I pack enough fuel? And it's always fun to kind of figure that out. But yes, when we get here with our proper Jool colonization fleet, it will be much better. And yes, I did say fleet, and I do mean fleet. It will be fantastic. I'm so excited about it, and I can't wait to show you. But it'll be in the next episode, because I don't want to be spoiling this episode with, plans of everything else. This is all about the last probe. And, of course, coming back from Duna and Eve, we're taking a brief break from our Jool exploration to check in with the Concordia, see how it's doing, and do our plane change. Which is very necessary. And as I said, the Concordia will be part of the Jool mission architecture. What will it be doing? You'll find out next episode. But anyway, well, I'm really teasing the shit out of this. I'm doing a great job right here. This is like some marketing up in here. But anyway, yes, the plane change, obviously fairly uneventful. We just changed the planes. Jeb is bored out of his skull right now, flying this gigantic spaceship around the sun, because, he does it all the time. I think he's only done 2 interplanetary missions, so he's probably still pretty hyped, actually. That was, yeah. Anyway, also, the Canterbury is actually about to get home before the probe will arrive at Pol, so let's go and see that. So, the 7 Kerbals from the Duna mission are arriving back at Kerbal now, probably very happy to be home. And we're going to almost circularize our orbit, but not quite, because we don't have quite enough fuel. And then we're going to send up a craft to come and grab the Kerbals and take them home. Although that'll probably be at the end of the episode, not right now. Totally because we need to quarantine the Kerbals for a bit, and not because I forgot briefly, but whatever. So yes, the burn won't take too long. The Canterbury's pretty light now that it's almost entirely drained of fuel and is carrying no cargo. It's a very high-performing spacecraft, but it just... so this could go to Jool, actually, and would have enough life support, probably, for at least some Kerbals. But this won't be part of that. This will remain the Duna ship because it does a very good job of hauling freight from Kerbin to Duna. So it will continue to perform that task as we continue to try and live on Duna. But we obviously have the bigger plans coming up, so we probably won't see too much Duna for a while. But anyway, yes, so you can see we are in orbit now, nice and safe, but we want to get that down to as low as possible, burn out all the fuel so that we can most easily meet up with it with a crew capsule. So yes, there we go. We are nicely in orbit, all is good. The crew are feeling very happy to be home and getting ready to be brought back to the surface. And then, funnily enough, we're back with the Concordia, and we just got a little mission to get an EVA around the sun. That's about 100 grand for just taking an EVA around the sun. So, yeah, like I say, I need a lot of money, so I'm taking on any mission I can get that'll pay out well. But now we're finally back over to Jool so that we can see just see Pol, I guess, see the landing on Pol, all of that stuff. So we're setting in our final burn to get it on the right trajectory, and then we will head on over there, hopefully not encounter any moons while we're while we're heading over there, which we don't. We almost hit Tylo, but there was nothing indicating that we would. So yes, now we are here, arrived. Look at that weird little brown ball of something. And we're sending data back already because we have a mission to explore Pol, which requires us to send data back from the space around Pol, get into orbit of Pol, land on Pol, and send some data back from the surface of Pol. So that is why I have to land in this mission. I'm not just crazy. I just need the money. So yes. Looks like we'll be able to get a nice tight circular orbit with the fuel we have, and then have more to land. The nice thing about Pol and Bop is they're very light worlds, so you can land with pretty much anything. It's one of the worlds you can land on with an EVA pack quite easily, although you can do that with Minmus. So the Kerbal EVA packs have a pretty good thrust-to-weight ratio, and also they have 600 meters per second of delta V. Unless you're carrying anything, of course. If you're using the Kerbal attachment system or Kerbal inventory system, then it will slowly reduce as you carry more things. But yeah, most of the time you have 600 meters per second of delta V, which is more than enough to land on most of the little moons. In fact, I think I have landed on Pol, or maybe Bop before with, no, I think it was Pol with a EVA pack. It was in a live stream I did a long time ago. Talking of which, I've started live streaming again. Go follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/tapegaming. Yep, I'm always advertising. Anyway, now we're just drifting down to the surface of Pol. I keep almost calling it Bop because I can never tell the difference between either of them. But yes, so yeah, we're going to start firing up our engine soon. We can leave it a while. But yes, now we start firing it up to slow down so that we can touch down gently on the surface. Of course, we want to touch down as gently as possible since we don't have landing legs. We just have RTGs, which we need for power because they provide all of our power. And then into 1x time accelerator to watch us gracefully touch down and probably fall over. Well, definitely fall over. There we go. We bounce a little bit, flip over, but it was gentle enough that it caused no damage to the spacecraft. And we've got our mission for landing. Now we just need to send some science back, and we will have completed our entire Explore Pol mission, which will provide us with quite a lot of money. And you can see that we're just firing up the engine to try and get us onto flatter ground so that we slide around a little less. But yes, there you go. We get a world first, we get another one of our objectives, and that is all good. Alright, looks like we've stopped now and safely on the surface, so we're going to use one of our many pieces of scientific equipment. This was very laden with scientific equipment. It's was supposed to explore 2 worlds actually, but it's done quite a good job anyway. But yes, so once that is sent back, we will get about just loads of money. I think like 400 grand plus all the objectives plus the advance. Yeah, lots of money basically, and we should have enough money. Yes, over 4.5 million. That should more than pay, or just about pay, for my dual architecture, because it's expensive and it's got so much cool stuff in it, and I actually had to write it down because I couldn't even keep it all in my head because I'm just, doing the other scientific equipment, because why not? I don't need the science right now, but it's always good to get science. Yeah, I had to write I had to like diagram out and write down what each ship did, and I'll show you it next episode, but I couldn't keep it in my head because it's such a big mission, and it's going to be crazy, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to keep teasing it, and you're all going to be like, oh my god, stop talking about it, I just want to see it, and I'll be like, no. Anyway, there we go, landed now, and you get to see the weird kind of ring of loaded in textures. You can see the ground scatter is only loaded in for a brief part on the surface, but it does look pretty cool. But that is the end of the final probes mission. There will be no more probe missions. They are all done now. That was the last one. I hope you enjoyed it very much. But anyway, the final part of this episode is sending up an Ares 5 vehicle to the Canterbury to just bring back the Kerbals on the Canterbury because, well, they need to come home. I mean, we can't just leave them there. They'll run out of life support, which I should really start thinking about with the people on the Odin station. I just kind of left them there so long ago. It was just 2 Kerbals in the in the fuel shuttle, but I just sort of left them there. But we will actually be using the Odin station for something to do with the dual architecture. Sorry, I actually didn't mean to mention that, but it will be the orbital shipyard on there will be used for building one of the big ships. And that's going to be so awesome. So yes, okay, I'll stop hyping it now. We'll just focus on the flying up there. Ares 5 on top of a Pulsar X, I think. Yeah, which is my favorite rocket because it's a single stage and is really easy to reuse, which is just fantastic. So yes, and then we'll deploy it there, even though it's not in a circular orbit, because it'll just make it easier on re-entry for the rocket, because we don't want it to burn up, because it's not that expensive, because it doesn't use the vector engines, which are crazy expensive, but it's still not good to lose a vehicle. So anyway, yes, I'm doing a little bit of preliminary planning, so I'll know that just to find out if I do have enough time to land the booster now, and I do, which is good, because we don't want to be leaving this in space and forgetting about it. Like, I'm sure there are many forgotten about boosters in space currently, because I sometimes just sort of forget. There are a lot of probes. Those are all pretty much communication satellites, which I just kind of have left there because they're so useful. Although not anymore, because I turned remote tech off because I couldn't be having that bullshit for the final dual mission. So yeah. Anyway, yes, now it's time to re-enter. We've deployed our air brakes. We're all good. We shouldn't burn up. We were in a fairly low circular orbit, so all is good. And I'm sure we'll land fairly close to the KSC. We don't land like at the KSC this time, but I've gotten pretty good at least landing on the continent. And quite a few times I've landed, I think this vehicle at least, at the KSC, like on the green, which is always really awesome to do, because you're like, oh, look at that. Because just return to launch site landings are the best to do, but usually they're a bit fluky. Whereas this one lands just behind the mountains of the KSC. It would have been closer, but I had to slow down so that we, firstly, didn't burn up, and secondly, didn't hit the mountains, because you don't want to land a rocket on the mountains. So yes, the chutes are deployed, but it's in the dark, so I'm having a little trouble landing, and I slightly overcook it and break the main engine, but everything else is fine, so we'll get most of the money back for this, just not the main engine. Eventually it'll stop though after we stop the air brakes, stop sliding down the hill, and yes, I think we get most of the money back. I don't really remember, but yeah. Anyway, back in orbit with the Ares 5. There's no crew on this, it is probe controlled currently because it has a capacity of 7 and there are 7 Kerbals on the Canterbury. So yeah, it's just doing everything itself. But yeah, we're just doing some plane changes, and then we'll need to meet up with the craft, which will require some kind of prograde burn and then some kind of amount of waiting, which I think is fairly significant. But we'll just cut through that planning, because there's been a lot of orbital planning today with all the dual missions. So yeah, here we are just doing the burn, and we will meet up in, I think, 3 orbits time. So we'll also skip through that. I always just go back to the KSC for lots of time warping, because otherwise it's really annoying to wait for. So yes, here we are. After a little bit of time warping, we're ready to arrive at the Canterbury, ready to dock on. We're going to have a pretty high relative velocity, but this the Ares 5 has a lot of delta V, because it's kind of a general purpose craft, so it can do, you know, lots of things. If it needs to meet up with high velocity spacecraft, or just kind of maybe even go out to the moon, it could, because it's always good to have a little bit of leeway with the craft you have in space. So yes, now the Canterbury flying well, we're flying past it, I guess. Well, it's all relative. We're flying past each other, but not for long. I will slow down and dock to the docking port and rescue the crew. However, that will all be in the, well, we will dock in this episode, but the bringing the crew home will be in the next episode. I've really got to stop saying rescue the crew. They're not in any kind of distress, but yes. Anyway, that will, as I said, happen in the next episode. The Concordia will get home in the next episode, and we'll start work on the dual architecture, and I'll explain it all to you then. I may have hyped it too much. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you're looking forward to future episodes where we will be colonizing Jool. Did you know? Did I mention Jool? I don't think I did, but we'll be colonizing Jool all in future episodes. But I hope you have enjoyed this. This has been KSP with Tape. I will see you next time.